Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I am Samantha, the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we start and introduce our guests, I have a little bit of legal housekeeping to do. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting, they are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on any information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. We are thrilled to bring you this educational presentation today, Wealth and Wellness. Attendees are muted, but we encourage you to ask questions using the chat box below in Zoom. The presenter will answer these queries during or after the webinar today as appropriate. If you do ask a question in the chat box, go ahead and leave your phone number as well. If we can't get to your question during the event, we'll make sure someone reaches out to you after today's event. We want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please do not hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion on the material today. I would like to go ahead now and introduce you to today's presenter. Similar to the key role a mainspring plays in a precision timepiece, Andy Rogers enjoys playing a key role to his clients' financial lives. This means having a difficult family conversation surrounding important financial decisions and providing a guiding hand through meaningful life choices that can impact generations to come. Andy appreciates long-lasting relationships built on core values, discipline goals, and dreams of the future. Using real-world experiences, Andy coaches clients through the early phases of accumulation into financial independence and beyond, priding himself on a refreshingly honest approach to modern wealth management. And with that, I leave it to you today, Andy.
Awesome. Thank you, Samantha. That was a wonderful introduction. It was nice to chat with you earlier. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here with you on this beautiful afternoon. Wanted to talk to you about a subject that most financial advisors probably don't like to tackle, which is how to tie together your wealth and your wellness. And a lot of that comes from my background. I had a mentor when I was growing up, and I'll start this with a story. So my grandpa was my mentor, and similar to the picture that you see here, when I would take walks with Grandpa Andy, we would talk about a lot of different things. I would ask all the questions, why is the sky blue? Why is water wet? We talked a lot about money, and my grandpa grew up in the Depression era. So if you know anything about the 30s, you know that there was a scarcity, there was a depression, and anyone that grew up in that time frame was very guarded about money, and they didn't like to talk about it. So for my grandpa, it was kind of a sign of weakness to ask for help. And a lot of times, that was difficult for him, and it was difficult for his family. No one really liked to give him advice. They thought he had it all together. But it turns out that Grandpa Andy started to have health issues in his early 50s. And by 55, he had his first heart attack. And it turns out that Grandpa Andy, although he grew up with nothing, he was born in an orphanage. And during the Depression, he built up a pretty good amount of wealth by the time he was in his mid-50s. But unfortunately, by the time he passed away, he spent through basically everything that he had grown, and he left this planet with nothing left. And so that was difficult for me to watch as a young child, to see my mentor and this person that I had built up in my mind basically end up on his deathbed with nothing left. So that kind of leads into a story about how Grandpa Andy taught me to dream. And in my own experience, he taught me to dream really big, and he told me that I was capable of anything, and I believed that. And so I have another story when I was, and it's kind of about fitness. So when I was a kid, I was watching the 1984 Olympics. And during the 1984 Olympics, there was a United States gymnast, and her name was Mary Lou Retton. And if you know anything about Mary Lou Retton, she was basically about to win the Olympics, and she needed to get a perfect 10 on a vault. And if you know anything about vault, you run down the runway, you hit the springboard, you throw your body in the air, you do a bunch of flips, and then you try and stick a landing. And it's almost impossible to stick a landing on the vault, but she needed to get a perfect 10 to win the Olympics. And she runs down the runway, flips in the air, sticks the landing, and she gets a 10. And I remember jumping up and down, and I was like, wow. And I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, I want to do that. And my mom started laughing, and she said, sure, Andy, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. So, I started as a young boy wanting to become a world famous gymnast. And so I had these big dreams in my head that most people laughed at, but ended up at age 17 getting invited to the Olympic Training Center, trained as a gymnast. By age 19, I was in the Arizona State men's gymnastics team, traveling all around the country. So a lot of those dreams that I had as a child came true. And I reached this level of fitness that if you've ever seen gymnasts, I was in great shape. I was able to do an iron cross on the rings for 20 seconds so I could hold my weight for a long period of time. So I was at this peak physical shape. But by my late 20s, I ended up fully disabled. So I've seen this rise of my health to this place where most people never get. And then I've also seen the bottom and the low of the lows, where I was fully disabled and couldn't get out of bed during the day. So that's kind of my own experience with health and also with wealth. And so, when we're talking about how can we relate this to fitness, a lot of times it's just about getting started and getting some of the ideas in your head out of your head and getting started, Sam, with just building a plan for yourself. And how are you going to set goals to achieve some of these things that you want in your life, whether that's your fitness goals, whether that's your financial goals, whether that's your health or your wellness. We want to have really good goals, and we want to have those goals laid out. And we want you to dream big. So just like when I was a child, dreaming big and not being afraid to do that, and actually sharing those dreams with your partner or your family or whoever is in your life, making sure you have those dreams out on the table so that you can see them and you can know that you're achieving them. And when I was speaking with Marche from Advice Chaser in our last webinar, we were talking about dreaming extremely big around your home. What do you want your house to look like? What do you want to have? Multiple houses? Do you want to have rental properties and vacation homes? What do you want your lifestyle to look like? Do you want to travel around the world, or do you want to be a homebody and never have to go anywhere or work ever again? What do you do from a health perspective? How do you want to feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you want your wellness? A lot of times when we talk about wellness, we want to talk about our mental condition as well. So how do we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem? So both mental and physical well-being from a mindset perspective is very important as well. And then what are your goals with your family and your relationships? So these are all things that typical financial advisors don't talk a lot about. They're mainly number oriented, but I really like to enjoy working with my clients through their goals and dreams, as well as what some of their fitness goals are, because I've seen firsthand what it's like to, both be disabled personally, to see what something like what happened to my grandfather when he was very wealthy, and see that go to zero. And now I've got hundreds of clients that I work with that also, there's one thing that they all have in common. If they're not healthy, then they don't feel good about themselves, and money doesn't mean anything if you don't have your health. So going on to the next slide, we want to talk a little bit more about having these big goals. So dreams to me, are just a set of goals. So you have this big dream and you may never achieve that dream, but in order to get there, you have to set little goals for yourself along the way. And for financial purposes, setting big goals, a lot of my clients I work with, they want to be millionaires. A lot of times when we work with millionaires, they want to be multimillionaires. So having a real specific goal about, what you want your net worth to look like is very important for your mindset, getting your mind out of that place like my grandfather was, where he was very scarcity. He had a scarcity mindset. He was scared that somebody was going to take everything away from him again. And what ended up happening was that his health was what ended up taking that all away from him. So sometimes we talk about these BHAGs. So I see the term BHAG in there. If you're familiar with a BHAG, it's a big hairy ass goal. And so a lot of times those are, somebody's going to tell you, hey, that goal is unachievable. And a lot of times when you put your dreams out there, you're going to have people that tell you that your dreams are unachievable. But that's why you set those dreams out into separate goals and you start working towards those things one at a time. So Sam, you can go on to the next slide again. One of the things that I found was very helpful for myself in my journey. Obviously, I'm in a position now where I'm no longer disabled. And a lot of that came from getting out of bed every day and having a vision and working towards that vision. And when it comes to healthcare and being healthy, I saw myself, go all the way to, disabled, and had a vision of myself being back at this level where I was a top level athlete again. And now that I recently turned 50, I'm happy to say that I feel better than I have since I was a gymnast when I was in my early 20s. And a lot of that had to do with me setting these big, ridiculous, exciting goals that were awesome for me to think about, but also motivating me to do what I needed to do on a daily basis to get out of bed and get back into good shape, running, doing exercise, lifting weights, and having goals for all those things so that you can support yourself and know where you're at every step of the journey. So the vision board technique is very good because it gets some of these ideas out of your head and into a place where you can see them. And so what I've done for myself is I get this subscription to a magazine. It's called the Rob Report. And the Rob Report, it has these ridiculous high-end items in there that, Lamborghinis and helicopters and jet airplanes and all these crazy things that I don't currently have, but I certainly dream about having these sorts of things. And I've taken them out of these magazines, I've taken like a big piece of cardboard from an Amazon delivery, and I've pasted all these different visions onto this board, and it sits in my wall in my office. And so I'm looking at this vision board all the time. And it's very strange sometimes when I look up at the vision board and I realize, I actually have that car that I put on my vision board 10 years ago. And I've put that vision board away, but for some reason, your mind, when you get these things out of your head and into reality, your mind can really do good things to set you up into a good place to achieve some of these goals. So I encourage you to, next time you get an Amazon delivery, take a piece of that cardboard, go grab some of your favorite magazines, images from those magazines, where you see yourself in the future, get them out of your head and into a place where you can see them, and put it in and put it on your timeline in your mind. I want to achieve some of these things by this date. And that comes to, the naysayers. So when we, again, when you start putting yourself out there like that, I was telling Marche last time we were doing this about the fact that I really want a flying car. And everyone that I talk to about having a flying car thinks I'm totally insane. But the fact is that they are producing flying cars now. And, I've put myself on a waiting list to get one. And I would like in my lifetime to have a flying car, and just to make the naysayers jealous. All the people that told me I'm never going to have a flying car, I want to have a flying card just to tell them that I do. And so a lot of times when somebody's telling you you can't achieve your dream or your goals, that's the motivation you need to push forward and really take action on what you're trying to do, both financially and from a health perspective. I recently signed up for a charity event in October where I live here in Seattle, Washington, and there's the Space Needle. It's very tall. Apparently, it's about 800 flights of stairs. And so I signed up to climb the Space Needle for charity. And I think that that's totally crazy, but I signed up for it anyways. And now I've got this goal by October. I need to be able to, run up 800 flights of stairs and do that in a certain time frame. So anyways, setting those goals for yourself, a lot of times putting something on the calendar and actually setting the date is a good way to motivate yourself to get moving forward on that sort of goal. So let's talk about SMART goals. So if a dream is this giant, possibly unachievable goal, you want to break it up into these separate SMART goals. And so you can move on to the next slide, Sam. It's going to be an acronym. So SMART goal stands for specific. So you want your goal to be very specific. You want it to be measurable, meaning that your goal is your goal, but you need to know when you achieve it so that you can move on to the next goal, right? And you want it to be realistic. You want it to be relevant to your situation. And then you want some sort of time component to it. So moving on to the next slide there, to set a SMART goal is, especially with the financial back to it, let's say you want to have $1 million net worth, and you want to have $1 million net worth by the time you retire in 2026. And you want to have that by December 31st, 2026. You want to have $1 million in your retirement account. And that's your new SMART goal. It's very specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant to what you've got going, and it's got this time component to it that makes you accountable for achieving that goal. So a lot of times when it comes to setting SMART goals, just getting started and understanding how to write those goals down is very important. So we've actually come up with a SMART goals worksheet where you can go out and write down exactly how specific that goal is. You can write out the measurement of that goal. You want, for example, on this slide, we're talking about what do you want your net worth to be? So from a financial perspective, what your net worth is if you add up everything you own, you take all of your accounts, all of your assets, everything that is worth anything, you add it all up, you have this big number, and you subtract out what you owe other people. So you take out your mortgage, your credit cards, your car loans, and things like that. So then you're left with this number, and that's your net worth. It's all of your assets minus your liabilities is your net worth. And I make sure that I know what all of my clients' net worth goals are. That way, when I check in with them, we know if they're on track to achieve those goals. And most people just don't have that. They don't have that written down. And if you don't have things written down, or you don't have it out of your head and in a place where you can see it, a lot of times it's much more difficult to achieve. So is it important to you to leave a legacy? What does that look like? A lot of my clients, when we're talking about their wealth, they are very focused on their kids and possibly their grandkids. They want their kids to be independent, but they also want to take care of their grandkids in the future. So if your intention is to leave a legacy for your grandchildren, what do you want that to look like? And a lot of times there's different goals that you need to set for yourself, like setting up a trust or doing something with actually having conversations with those people that spell out what your intentions are. Going back to my grandpa, Andy, unfortunately, he didn't have anything written down. So, his kids, which includes my mom and her two brothers, when he started to have these healthcare issues, They didn't know what he wanted. They didn't know how to deal with this. They didn't understand what to do with the different pieces of real estate that he owned. So they ended up just starting to sell things. And that's never a good thing when you don't have a plan in place and all of a sudden you become sick. It's very difficult for somebody to jump into your place and start to unwind the thing that you set up if they don't know what your intentions are. So do you want to give to charity? If you were to pass away tomorrow, where do you want your money to go? And is that spelled out somewhere? A lot of times that's going to be legal documents, whether you're working with an estate planning attorney or a financial advisor, or a lot of times, my clients also have tax goals. They want to save money on taxes. So how can we lower the amount of tax that we pay during the year? And if we paid too much tax last year, how can we lower that amount this year? What's our goal for that? Retirement, what are you looking for in retirement? Some of my clients, they want to travel the world. And some clients, like I said, they want to stay at home and never go anywhere ever again. They just don't want to work and they just want to sit there and watch TV. So a lot of times those people that don't want to go anywhere, they end up sick and having some health issues. And like I said before, anytime you are dealing with healthcare issues in retirement, becomes very difficult to sustain your lifestyle because health care is expensive and nobody plans for it. So if you haven't, sat down with a professional, whether that is your financial advisor or maybe you don't have a financial advisor, the intention of this webinar is to get you to work with somebody that can help you get some of that stuff out of your head, act as a third set of eyes on your situation. That way, if you do get sick, somebody else outside of your family or outside of the people you care about understands what your intentions are and what your goals are, so you can continue to achieve those goals, even if something happens to you, whether you become sick or disabled. And so again, health, none of this money stuff means anything if you don't have your health. Living a wealthy, abundant lifestyle is more than just, having your finances in order. It's being able to enjoy the wealth that you have, being able to put it into action with the people that you know and care about. And a lot of times with my clients, especially if they're wealthier, what are the organizations that you want to give back to, or what community did you grow up in, and how can you have an impact on that community with the money that you have saved? So you can't do any of that if you aren't in good shape. And so we want to make sure that we're always setting goals for ourselves as far as money, and then also setting goals for ourselves as far as fitness. So that can bring us to our next slide, where we talk a little bit about areas in the world where people live to be over 100 years old. And it's pretty strange if you haven't heard about this. There's about 5 areas on the planet where a pretty high percentage of the population lives to be over 100 years old. And so when you study this, you look and you say, hey, why is this happening? Why are some areas of the country people live to be 50, 60, and in other areas of the world they live to be over 100? What are the factors that go into that longevity? And when we study these things, we found 5 different areas in the world. Those areas are got them listed here. So one is in Greece, Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, Oglostra, Sardinia, Loma Linda, California. So we have one here in the United States. So in Loma Linda, California, folks are living to be over 100 years old, and it's a certain percentage of the population gets to be over 100. So, and then another area is in Costa Rica. So what we found is that these areas, they all have a healthy diet. And so if you take Greece, for example, the Grecian diet or the Mediterranean diet, a lot of times is a lot of leafy greens, raw vegetables, a little bit of grain on top of that, and then maybe even a smaller piece of protein. So many of these areas, they eat primarily raw vegetables, and, red meat, for example, is not their primary meal choice all day, every day. So they eat a really healthy diet. They get a little bit of exercise every day. And you can know if you got exercise if you break a sweat, right? So I like to tell folks, one of the things that I did to get back to health was every day I found a way to start working out and break a sweat once a day. Having a low stress lifestyle. So if you do have stress in your world, and again, a lot of times as a working individual, we work way too long, way too hard, and that ends up affecting our health. Many times my clients, they work too long and they should have probably retired several years ago, but they're so concerned about their money that they forget to retire. So having a low stress lifestyle leads to these people living to be over 100 years old. They live for their family. A lot of them wake up in the morning. They have farms that they take care of. They get their food from the garden. They take care of the chickens and they get their eggs fresh from the chickens, and they go out and they get their milk from the cows. I know recently my wife and I were in Costa Rica, and we had some of the most wonderful food that actually came right off the land that we were staying on, the fruit from the trees. And so we got to stay with a wonderful family. And this woman was in her late 90s. She got up every day, started picking fruit from the trees, milking the cows. She would make cheese. Somebody from the neighborhood would bring in a fish and they would trade cheese for fish. And, it's no wonder that these people live to be over 100 years old, because their lifestyle is very simple, low stress. They eat really well, and they're out there tootling around, managing their own food and gardens. And they have a very big sense of spirituality. So a lot of these things that I'm talking about, they're not your average financial advisor concepts. They have this sort of this spiritual aspect to them. And I'm a big believer in that. So, if you do look for a financial advisor, you can find somebody that takes some of these things into account. Not only do they care about your financial situation, but also they're looking at more of a comprehensive picture of what your lifestyle is going to look like, and knowing that money and health, fitness, and finances, they all kind of go together, and that having some sort of higher power that you are guided by, whether that's yourself or some higher power that you look to for your spirituality. That's one of the things that these places have in common. So you can go on to the next slide. So setting health goals, for myself as a gymnast, like I told you, when I was growing up as a kid, I had this goal of being in the Olympics. And that was a huge goal, right? And I didn't quite achieve that goal, but I did get pretty close. So getting to go to the Olympic training camp, I had a lot of goals that I had to set and achieve along the way. And I did a lot of those in my mind through meditation. So things like eating clean, what am I going to do when I wake up and I have a competition today? How am I going to eat that morning? How is it going to make me feel later that day? Drinking lots of water. I keep water next to my bedside table, and I drink a big thing of water every night and a big thing of water every day. Got one right here, giant thing of water. Always keeping your system flushed out. I tell my wife I like to pee clear once a day. So that's something that's important to me in my world. Is I know that if I've cleaned out my system, and I've got to go to the bathroom a lot, unfortunately, but I do feel very clean inside, which is much different than when I was sick. Back in the 90s, I drank a lot of Mountain Dew. I drank big 2 liters of Mountain Dew every day, and ate frozen corn dogs and frozen burritos all the time. So my inside of my body was not, the environment was not healthy, and that ended up in me being sick. So eating clean, exercising, getting enough rest, So making sure you get, 7 to 8 hours sleep. In these blue zones where people live to be 100 years old, sleep is a big portion of what they do. So they take naps in the afternoon. If their body is tired, they lay down and they rest. And then reducing your stress. I know that that's a little easier said than done, but what I encourage folks to do nowadays is put your phone down. That device that's constantly in your hand, the social media, the instant gratification of Facebook and Instagram and all these different things, it creates stress in our brains and body, and that's how they keep us addicted to those things. So a lot of times putting your phone down during certain times of day, keeping it away from you when you're in bed at night or whatever that might look like, is a great way to reduce stress. So that leads me into meditation. So I attribute a lot of my success and success of my clients to encourage them to meditate, which means you're not quite going to sleep, but you're stopping. You're setting aside some time to sit there and be with yourself. You got to let the world take care of itself for a little while. And I found that 20 minutes is a really good time frame for meditation. And it also gives you a chance to visualize what you might want the rest of your day to look like. So, you've spent half your day working and you're pretty exhausted, rather than laying down and just taking a nap, maybe you meditate for 20 minutes and you think about what the last half of your day is going to look like. When you meditate, you put your heart in a place where you want to be, right? So you say, hey, even though I had a bad morning, I want to feel happy later today. So I'm going to put myself in that place. If I've got goals, I can put myself as if I've already achieved that goal. And a lot of times you'd be surprised how quickly the universe starts to line things up for you. And taking action on some of those dreams and things that I come up with in times when I meditate is, how I've gotten to where I am today versus, when I didn't understand any of this stuff. I was very sick and not in a very good place. So some of the meditations that I do for myself personally, I've set, goals for myself a long time ago where I wanted to have a certain amount of income in my career. I wanted to have a certain number of families and clients that I worked with. I wanted to not overwork myself during the day, but also achieve, some of these net worth goals, which, for my wife and I, because I don't have a pension, I wanted to have rental properties that generate cash flow so that if I decide to retire, I've got a passive source of income that is paying me on a monthly basis. And I set those goals a long, long time ago. And, as you go throughout the years, you have to reset those goals. So for somebody who was, fully disabled in his late 20s, to come to a place where my wife and I now are in a position where, we're hoping to retire a little bit early, but still work and still have a purpose. When we get up every day, we want to be able to give back to our community. We want to be able to give back to our clients and still maybe, be a consultant in the industry that you're in, or help other people that are new to the industry and train them and become a mentor and a coach. And that brings me to this next slide here, is the importance of mentors and coaches. Kind of a strange pitch coming from a company that's trying to hook you up with a financial advisor. But this is a big thing for me as a gymnast. In my early years of gymnastics, one of my best friends was my gymnastics coach. And I remember when my mom first took me to the gym, I was pretty blown away by the fact that I showed up in this place and there was maybe 5 or 6 guys and there was about 30 or 45 girls in this gym, and they were all in leotards and, very flexible. And I remember the gymnastics coach was looking at me and he said, "What are you looking at, boy?" And I said, "Nothing." He's like, "What'd you say?" I said, "Nothing." He said, nothing, sir, drop and give me 20. So right away, my coach he was holding me accountable, and he was, a great mentor for me. He got me in great physical shape. So if you're thinking about, having a fitness coach, it's a very good thing to have somebody to hold you accountable, because fitness can be extremely difficult if you're all by yourself. And that's true with finances as well. So, one of the main things that I tell folks is you could probably go out and do all of this yourself. And maybe you're doing that now. But the fact is that I've got experience with clients and with personal situations, and I've been doing this business long enough to where I can reduce some of the time that it takes you to learn some of these things by just helping you do it, doing it with you or doing it for you. So like my grandfather, like I said about my grandfather, he was very proud. His ego was large because he had built himself up from nothing into what he was. But the fact was that he was very scared to share conversations about money with either our family. My family never talked about money. It was like this forbidden topic, this taboo subject. And so now I look forward to talking with families about their money and getting them to share stories and getting them to have a conversation about finances. I've found that the families that I work with that talk to their kids and that they talk to their parents about money, they're so much better off than families that they look at money, talking about money as maybe that's a greedy conversation or that's an evil conversation. So a lot of times having some sort of coach, whether that's from a mindset coach or a meditation coach or a financial advisor coaching you on your finances, an estate planning attorney to help you with your legacy planning, a tax accountant to help you reduce your taxes, a coach that helps you work out, even that if that's joining group classes and having somebody that's leading a class. Like my mom currently is taking some Tai Chi classes. So she has trouble with arthritis also. And so I said, Mom, why don't you try Tai Chi? It's very slow movements, but it helps keep her flexible. It helps keep her strong. And it also works a lot on, calming her mind, because my mom is a worrier. So she likes to worry about things, even when she can't do anything about it. So those stresses and a lot of times exercise can reduce that amount of stress. So want to make sure we're good on time. So mentors and coaches, I can't recommend more. If you're not currently working with a financial advisor, talk to the folks at Advice Chaser. That will connect you with a financial advisor and make sure that you're a good fit with that individual. And if you have questions about finances, obviously that's going to be the best place to go is a CFP. So a CFP is somebody that has a certified financial planner designation. So they've gone through rigorous testing. They've got a college degree. They've passed a number of tests to get to this level. And there's only a certain number of CFPs in the country. I highly recommend, if you're looking for a financial advisor, that they have that CFP designation after their name. If you're looking for a fitness instructor, yoga, like I said, Tai Chi. I work with some massage therapists that have really helped free up some of the flexibility that I used to have. And so one particular modality of massage that I use is called Rolfing, Rolfing. If you're not familiar with Rolfing, they get in there and they work on your joints, make sure that your joints are straight. And the idea is that when you stand on your body, that it should be very comfortable, and that your bones are designed to stack all upon themselves and have zero discomfort while you're doing that. So if you feel any discomfort when you're standing, whether that's your knees, your hips, I highly recommend massage therapy to work some of those kinks out. And rolfing happens to be the modality that I really prefer for myself. Obviously there's tons of different types of massages. There's Eastern acupuncture. There's naturopathic physicians that work strictly with natural modalities. So those are some, kind of tips and pointers from me. Um, Maybe move on to the next slide. I think we're almost getting done here. So just having some checkpoints along the way for yourself is super important. If you have these big, hairy ass goals, like I talked about earlier, and you really are trying to go for it, you need to check in with yourself and set smaller, smart goals along the way. So, we did put the SMART goal worksheet on a website. So I would encourage you to, download that. I put the SMART goal worksheet up on goalplanbuilder.com. So if you go there, you can download that sheet and set your own SMART goals. Something that you can do today is download that form and start to set some goals for yourself, whether that's financial, fitness related, health related, retirement related, and say, hey, if I've got a 10-year retirement goal, I need to know where I'm at today. And then I need to know where I'm going to be 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now, 8 years from now, 9 years from now. And having a coach or mentor that you're checking in with to make sure that you're on track is definitely the way to go. So typically we reach out to clients about 3 to 4 times a year. So if you currently don't have a financial advisor, just getting to know somebody and having them do a check-in on you from time to time with your financial goals is, can put you head and shoulders above the competition and other folks that just aren't doing that. So, if my goal is to be a millionaire and I want to have $1 million in 10 years, 5 years from now, I probably have to have $500,000. So, just knowing where you're at along the way, a lot of times can light a fire under you and make sure that you get to where you want to be. And then letting other people know what your goals are, like your spouse or your significant other. Maybe you have a partner, maybe you have kids, maybe you can help your kids achieve their goals, and working together as a family on wealth and wellness. What we found when we study the folks that are in these blue zones is that they work together as a community, and that helps them achieve these goals. And it also helps them live a happier, longer, healthier lifestyle. I think that's about it. So I'm not sure if any questions came through or if you guys enjoyed that or not. Let us know. Let Samantha know. And somebody from Advice Chaser will probably reach out to you and, allow them to hook you up with a financial advisor and at least have that conversation. It's not like you need to hire them, but just that initial consultation a lot of times can be very helpful for somebody that's never worked with a financial advisor. Highly recommend it. Coaches and mentors like my grandpa, Andy, my gymnastics coach, John Diaz, people that I trained with in the Olympic Training Center. And I have my own financial advisor as well. So even though I'm a financial advisor, I still have people checking in with me on my finances. And I also have a therapist that helps me so that I don't have to share all this stuff with my wife all the time. So, having somebody there that you can talk to about things that, maybe it is about your spouse and you don't necessarily want to talk to them about it. You probably don't want to tell your friends and family about it either. So having this third person as a coach or mentor, again, highly recommended. And it's what's taken me from where I was when I was laid up and couldn't even get out of bed to where I am today. So hopefully that was helpful. And Samantha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. It was inspirational to hear you talk. I am a big proponent of SMART goals and just being the healthiest version of yourself that you can be, because who you are today helps who you want to be in the future. On behalf of Advice Chaser, we want to thank our speakers, Andy, and the organizations that have worked with us to bring you this webinar today. Thank you so much for attending, and look for an email soon from us with a link to the replay of this event. We welcome you to share that replay with your friends and family. And here at Advice Chaser, we are all about helping you find a financial advisor who is a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisors has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anybody and anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link Find an Advisor. And once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you on another webinar soon. Have a great evening.
Thank you.